Have you ever been looking for a breakthrough? Like, you just wanna wake up one day and everything's suddenly different or changed? Well, let's talk about that more. I'm Mark Roach. This is Mark's M-A-R-X, Mark's Headroom. It's not Max Headroom like in the '80s, but Mark's, M-A-R-X, Headroom. And what I've been trying to do is listen to people that are reaching out or responding to some of the videos I'm putting out online. Mark's Headroom being one channel. Another channel I've been very active with is Transcendent, where I deal with more human potential, complex PTSD, and inner development type of issues. And then Futurewise Energy, where I get the most traffic. People are interested in the geopolitics and politics, and everything around oil and gas seems to kind of trigger conversation in people. And I enjoyed that discussion. And it's so fascinating to see people respond to me like I'm an oil company or an oil man, which, I have to say, in my the backyard of the one of the homes I grew up in here, I guess I really became an oil man. I accepted a scholarship to go to a football school in oil country and didn't know any better. Only thing I knew was what I saw on TV at the time. It was that show called Dallas, TV show that was on in the '70s, I guess in the early '80s. Um, Bobby and J.R. Ewing, and I didn't know any better. I felt like I had to make a decision. No one had really grown up in my family and gone straight into college, and that's what I did. And so I had to declare a major as I went and started playing football. Um, several things that I made decisions on when I was 17 that, well, you don't get do-overs in life, do you? But anyway, that's what happened. And so my dad realized that I wasn't really into football and I wasn't really into petroleum engineering, but he was a Marine. And since he's passed, I can say he was a Marine. Um, and it just wasn't discipline, and changing your mind was just not part of the scheme that he was promoting. And so when I wanted to change, I had to stick with it. And even after I got married early, and my um, beautiful childhood sweetheart wife, you know, um, she kind of held me to the bone, to the oil and gas thing as well. It was I guess when you're coming out of, from nowhere, with virtually nothing, the oil business and the pay that they were offering in the early '80s, looked pretty good. I was smart and good in school, and so I got that engineering degree and stuck with it all these years. But it's been one of those things that has kind of haunted me to deal with. It's kind of like, um, I was sexually molested by a kid when I was 5, and his name was Mark. So when people said my name, um, for many years, that really disturbed me because I hadn't dealt with all that. So when people today call me an oil man, I'm just now accepted that, or actually my nervous system is just healed enough that I'm starting to get my own life, starting to make my own choices going forward. So I've kind of let that, some anger and resentment go over being, you know, forced or really directed rather strongly into, um, providing for the people I've provided for, and just using the, what unfolds before me to the best of my ability. And so I've tried to get out of the business several times. So it's funny because I actually had a job offer in college and declined it on the spot because it just didn't feel right in my gut. And shortly after that, I told my wife what I'd done, and I was on the phone back with the man pretty quick to tell him I had reconsidered and hoped the job was still available. And even later, that same woman told me I had to quit my job, and I did. And it wasn't long before I was on a film set in Dallas, shooting a movie, one of them with some kind of famous people. And of course, I had three kids at the time, and I'd become a personal trainer. I was throwing newspapers and also selling shoes at Dillard's. And as in the wake of walking out of the boardroom of a high-level executive job at Snyder Oil Company in Fort Worth. And um, it wasn't long after that that I started doing international consulting and advising. And the oil business just kind of roared back and even, paid even a little bit better than it had before. But that was really based on my ability to communicate and feel with people around the world. So I ended up working with a lot of in a lot of what were called at the time third world countries, and today we call them developing countries. So I found myself with this strange relationship with energy and oil and gas, and so today I just responded, which I guess is as I'm breaking my fast, I'm quite sensitive, and um, so I responded to someone just a few minutes ago who had some pretty nasty things to say about um, me and the lies and so forth that they um, were describing in their comments. And but I've learned to really appreciate that because part of my mission is to reach people that may have some misconceptions about themselves and about how things work in the world and about their community. And a lot of people give up on other people, and for some reason I haven't done that. I did encounter a very super smart person this week who mentioned that maybe their own aspirations they were projecting onto others as if they wanted what they wanted as well. And I'm probably guilty as charged there, and always looking for people to help me understand, you know, their perspective and their plight in life better than I might understand it. That doesn't keep me from trying to work from my gut, my inner calling, which seems to have gotten clearer and clearer over the years. And now that as I find myself again doing a mix of film work with spiritual work and kind of inner healing work, here on Mark's Headroom and Transcendent, I find Futurewise Energy becoming a a more common place for people to kind of present themselves to me in their views to respond to, and I find that to be very. I think it's a very productive. It's kind of like a theater actor having a relationship with the audience from performance to performance. And of course, I'm not one to repeat myself um, in the way of doing the same play over and over again as an artist. I've always felt like film was my thing. So that's kind of like where Mark's Headroom comes in, where I can go and I can speak to things and kind of explore what comes up and put it out there, and I find myself speaking to things and reacting to things, that I've encountered during the week in a very raw way because I'm living much like a monk, fasting 5 days a week and refeeding myself on the weekend and exercising almost to failure during the fasting period daily. So it's a fascinating, thing that I'm to me that I'm doing because I guess that's my way of entertaining myself with life. I'm really amused at how, like, I'm here with my mom, and she's got, a news channel on full time, and they're talking about, a really awful situation where a woman's been kidnapped or, has, run into foul play in Arizona, and but it's nonstop around that issue, and I find it fascinating how people get so, entertained by some of these things, and I'm not it's not like I lack empathy for that situation because the lady that's missing is much like my own mother, and I feel for that family, but to turn that into, something that is a nonstop, talking point, whenever not even any new details really do come out, and yet, the circumstance around it can just turn into, hold the attention of a lot of viewers and advertisers and so it's just fascinating to see how that works when, some of us are, and I have several people like myself that are artists that are also tied to certain issues and to, maybe have their niche that they're known in, and some of those niches seem to be very worthwhile and very, may have a lot of real merit to them, and, yet the the attention that is focused and, um, around the world for some issues that, are entertaining to people is really, quite fascinating. And I do think that what we focus on does make a big difference. Um, so I guess I'm I'm kind of wandering a little now, and I'm trying to give myself space to do that here, and I hope you'll you'll have some tolerance for that. But I do find that the interest in this connection between the culture and policies that we make in the U.S. around energy to be, highly misunderstood, and there seems to be a lot of triggers and nationalism and racism um, involved in a lot of the things that I say that really take people and distract people's attention far away from the core issues and but I'm gonna keep it up. People say some pretty interesting things that you learn to respond to. And I guess it's the same thing that you might encounter as if you were doing a stand-up comedy or a live, theater performance where you've got a heckler or, someone that's just having a reaction to something you're doing or saying or some character you're portraying or some issue that you're speaking to that, creates a scene to respond to. So I find this to be a fascinating time. Um, I felt at times this last week that my whole, um, the way that I was operating was really changing, and I find this interaction with the collective through social media, um, posting, videos that I feel really called and moved to do in these different areas of my life, and then see the comments and feedback or non-engagement, be the feedback. Maybe that's the feedback from the algorithm either they don't know what to do with me, or there's no one interested, and it's hard to say. But I do see a growing footprint for the whatever the vibe is that I'm giving out here. Had some kind of some deeply felt stuff that came up yesterday when I was making a video for Transcendent. Some things that I wrote from an experience in my life that seemed to kind of flow into a recollection of Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea, and blending that in with some current events around artificial intelligence, and how it's seems to be such a strong thing. It enters into a lot of conversations, whether the conversations are about artificial intelligence or not. It seems to be something that is on everyone's mind, and I'm sure that's going to be probably ramping up and being even a stronger um, influence over the next year or two before it's finally kind of settled into some kind of where we really understand how the world is going to respond to that. Well, I'm not going to try to make anything else up right now, and just tell you I'm ready to go break this fast, and I hope you all have had a good week and enjoy the the Super Bowl on Sunday, and look forward to talking to you next week before Valentine's Day. All the best.